Hi and welcome to the next edition of The Promising Creative. Today I'm very blessed to have the amazing Jess here. Hi Jess.
Hello.
And today we're going to be talking all things about the assistant room and just general chit-chat.
General chit-chat.
So Jess, why don't you just introduce yourself to the camera and tell us who you are and what you're
that's
doing.
a really big
ask.
That's a really
Is it
big
a big
ask, yeah. Do you know, I think it's one of the hardest things to do, to introduce yourself. But I'm Jessica Gardiner. I'm the founder of a global PA network called the Assistant Room. We exist to support PAs and EAs at every stage in their career to be happier, less stressed, and for the first time feel supported in their own career as well.
Amazing.
So I absolutely love it. What else do you want to know?
So,
about me?
I'm going to peel it right back. So, I when I was reading up and doing just sort of like delving into you and seeing what your story was about, I noticed you come from a hard-working background. It was very quite similar to me, like just always having to graft. It was never given to us on any.
Yeah.
We don't even know what that silver spoon looks like. So, tell me a little bit more about your background and how you fell into what you do and what your upbringing has instilled in you as a person.
So I am very lucky. I have an incredible family. My parents are still together, which I think is very rare these days. But I grew up in Leigh-on-Sea. I was born when my dad was in the army. My mum was a very, very hardworking PA up in London. She basically paid the mortgage whilst he was off doing his own thing. He came out the army, set his own business up. So I've always been around exec energy. That's what I describe it as. You know, living with a CEO, I think I've sort of been hardwired to the realities of what running a business is, or seeing how your business impacts everyone around you that you live with. I've had that since I was very, very young. So I grew up in Leigh-on-Sea. I'm the eldest of 3 kids. So 2 sisters. So my dad is the only man in the house, which
Bless him.
Yeah, I'm sure he loves it sometimes. But there's a lot of energy in my household, a lot of chaotic energy. My dad's traditionally, you know, kind of Essex boy. My mum's East End. So yeah, it's always fun. There's always something going on, which is cool. But yeah, I went to school in Essex. Very quickly realised that actually working in Essex wasn't what I wanted to do. So I left college, didn't go to university. The plan was to take 2 years out, earn enough money to pay for at least 1 year of my degree, and then go to uni to study English literature, or go to art college or whatever I wanted to do. I've never been fully aware of the kind of the plan. You know, when people say, oh, you should have a plan, you should know what you want to do. That's never been me. Ever. I've never, ever really had much structure to what the future looks like. Okay. And I actually think that, you know, makes me successful in business, because I'm not, you know, determined to go down one path and only go down that path.
And you can switch quite easily.
Super quickly.
Okay.
Super quickly. Sometimes a bit too quickly. If you ask my team, they would say that I can't concentrate, I can't focus on anything for more than sort of 10 minutes. I would disagree. But I've never really been one for planning ahead. And that sounds really strange, because my job that I did when I came out of college to, you know, earn the money to go to university was a PA. I was a personal assistant. I worked in the personal assistant industry in total for about 12 years, focused on fashion, healthcare, and ultra high net worth property. And I absolutely loved it. I think, again, coming back to this exec energy that I was always around with my dad, I am absolutely, I mean, I'm super passionate about business. I love watching people run businesses, learning how to do something as well as learning how not to do something.
Okay.
And I think the value that you can get sitting next to leaders on a day-to-day basis is far more valuable than any degree you could do. I mean, yeah, you can go to university and learn how to put together a P&L and all of the things to do with, you know, what commercial awareness looks like on paper, but to actually see it in motion and to see when things go wrong and to see how people react to it. And you're not just sitting next to middle management, you're sitting next to the top guys, the top women, the CEOs, the CFOs. So it was just wonderful. I loved it. I did it for 12 years. But then back in 2016, I quit. I quit pretty much on the spot one day of my last EA role, and just decided I need a break. My mental health was in a really bad place.
Because it's quite intense, isn't it?
It is extremely intense. PAs and EAs don't get the credit that they deserve when it comes to the emotional stress, the emotional trauma that you go through as a PA or an EA, as well as the sacrifices that you have to make. And, you know, you kind of work for somebody else's success, which is really, really, really hard. So I just gave up one day. I just thought, I don't want to do this right now. Not that I don't ever want to do it again, but I just don't want to do it right now. And decided to take 2 months off to sort of find myself, go to Bali or do whatever people do when they're going through a midlife crisis. Or at my age, at that point, it was a quarter life crisis. And I very quickly realised, going from working 17, 18-hour days every single day of the week, and I mean every single day, 7 days a week, not having a single day off, nearly 2 years, I very quickly realised how detrimental actually to my mental health such a big change and a transition was, going from being super busy to doing nothing.
Yeah.
It was just absolutely impossible.
Kind of lost what to do.
Yeah, I felt like I'd lost my purpose, and I think that I'd sort of developed my identity based on the person I was supporting.
Right, okay.
That was a bit of a weird realisation for me, and quite a scary realisation as well. I didn't feel like I'd been living my life. And I'd just been living through the lens of somebody else, which was really bizarre. So I decided to create the assistant room.
So that's what inspired it to
keep me
happen.
busy. Yeah,
Okay.
I was just bored. I was bored.
Sort of like not a hobby, but you were like, right, I'm going to do something.
I never intended it to turn into what it is. Like, I never in a million years thought that I'd be running my own company. I thought I say that I didn't have a plan, but the idea was that I would go back into being an EA after a couple of months, or a chief of staff.
So in those 2 months, that period where you were like, oh my God, I'm literally scratching the walls, I've got nothing to do. At what point did you think, right, I'm now going to start to look to do something? Was there a period in time when you were like, right, I need to just let my brain defrazzle? And how quick was it before you were like itching again? And what did you do to did you try and prolong that period, or did you just say, right, I'm done, I need to get on and move to something else?
I think it was 48 hours.
I mean,
I think it was 48 hours. And I learned, that 48 hours felt like weeks. You know, nothing to do. Everybody else was at work. You know, I pretty much quit with no savings and no job to go to. So that was an interesting sort of thing to take into consideration as well, I suppose. But yeah, it was 48 hours. I'm pretty sure. If I look back, I don't think I did more than 2 nights on the sofa just watching Netflix without thinking, oh, I'm so glad I don't have to wake up tomorrow morning. But it came, really, the idea of the assistant room came from a couple of things. One, boredom. But 2, as a PA, I never felt that I could relate to any of the other networks that existed. So at the time, everything was very corporate, very old-fashioned. The word secretary was still being used. And there just wasn't anything that I could relate to. As an EA who at 23 years old was managing multi-million-pound budgets on behalf of my boss and acting more like a business partner and not just somebody who, you know, does what is seen as a traditional PA or secretarial role. I hate that word, secretary. That's a bit of a swear word now. But I just thought, I need to create something that, you know, represents who I am, and surely I can't be the only person who feels lost in this industry. So that's how the assistant room started. It began as a blog. It was a combination of interviews with PAs and EAs, very, very candid interviews. Tell me what you love about the job. Tell me what you hate about the job, your challenges, your achievements. And then restaurant reviews from the perspective of, what would I need to know if I was booking my boss in here? And then, long story short, I never went back to work for anybody else, because I was right in thinking that there were lots of other people that felt like me. And now it's huge, and I never expected it to be the way it is, but we support people now in over, I think the last time I counted, actually, it was 51 countries.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And have you, in between the time since you've started, so 2016, we'll touch on COVID in a minute, but have you managed to take time out now? How does your Are you still going hammer and tong it, or do you find that you can find more balance? Or
I love what I do, luckily. So somebody from the outside looking in would say I have no balance whatsoever. It goes in peaks and troughs. So this week I went to see Avril Lavigne at Alexandra Palace. Last night I was at the ballet. Tonight I've got dinner. And so I'll be away from my computer. But there are some weeks where I don't go out at all. And I will work until midnight because I'm passionate about it. It doesn't feel like work. So my current PA, Amy, who I absolutely love, and I couldn't do this without, she said, it feels like we just come to work to hang out with each other as, friends. And it just so happens that we're doing things that are related to projects or clients or events. So it's really fun. I'm very lucky. I think after 6 years, the fact that I still have this genuine passion and there are still ideas coming through, it makes me realise that I'm in the right place.
And did COVID actually affect what you guys were doing? And how did you sort of deal with that? Because obviously we were all locked away.
Yeah, it was hard.
For a period of time.
It was really hard. I remember ringing my accountant and saying to him, Jason, we've got 400 quid left in the bank. And I'm going to take the dog out for a walk. And by the time I come back with Pepper, I'm going to decide whether or not to close the doors of this business because I can't do this anymore. I think that the mental impact of running your own company, you can't understand it when it's bad unless you're in that situation. And people completely underestimate the psychological impact of running a business and being responsible for other people. You can't describe it. I mean, I'm sure that you understand what that's like.
Yeah. It's a different type of pressure.
Completely different type of pressure. People rely on you to
pay their bills.
Exactly. People have got families, and it's their career and it's their life. But we launched the membership platform that we have now during COVID. We were supposed to launch it was supposed to launch the weekend after Boris announced lockdown.
Cheers, Boris.
Yeah. And I had basically spent 18 months developing this new concept, going out to different executives, people directors, PAs, EAs, VAs, private assistants, pretty much anybody who was involved in the industry to say, right, we need to take things up a notch now. We've got the podcast, we've got the magazine, but we need to start developing something that's going to help nurture individuals on a member by member basis. So what's working, what's not working, what's missing from the industry? How can we make something, how can we make something that's going to benefit you on a regular basis? So I had this amazing membership, had stuck 25 grand into it, again, basically emptied the business bank account, like I have done a couple of times, emptied the business bank account, had a massive project, loads of people redeveloping the website, creating all of these new processes, these new systems. We had over 1,000 people signed up to the wait list to join when we launched. And when we came to the original launch date, I said, right, let's push this back a little bit. Boris has just announced lockdown. This is like a glorified flu. We're going to be through this in a couple of weeks. Fast forward to July, and I was sat there sweating, thinking we're not earning any money because all of our revenue streams have disappeared because nobody was running events, everybody was furloughed, everything was just falling apart. PAs and EAs tend to be the ones who are let go as well to begin with first during anything because they're seen as an overhead, which they are absolutely not an overhead. And we launched in July, and it was awful. It was so depressing. It was so soul destroying because everything was out of my control. The launch that we had planned to have, it was the complete opposite of the reality that we did have. And there was so much competition in the PA industry at that time.
So how would you cope when you were feeling like depressed and it was like this big thing that you'd built up to had just literally like fallen flat on its face in front of you for no fault? And also, like, I feel that PAs and EAs, they're very like, everything has to be in a certain order. Nothing can not be where it's supposed to be. You have much more control.
Yeah.
So how do you cope with when things go wrong and you're like, okay, I'm now feeling really low and I'm feeling depressed? How did you deal with that? What did you do to get yourself out of it? Did you just work harder, or was you more?
I think I lent on my dad a lot, actually, and my mum and my dad. You know, growing up in an environment where your parents run their own company, as I said earlier, you know, you see the impact of when things go wrong. And I kind of remember looking back at a time when the recession hit, and one of his clients, who owed him something like 350 grand, just decided to close one day and reopen under another name, and completely get rid of all the debt that they were owed. And my mum and dad nearly lost the house. Everything changed at that point for my mum and dad. Like, I remember my mum and dad digging behind the sofa for change to pay the bills. Like, it got really, really dark. But you develop a resilience when you're part of that energy. You know, it didn't matter that I wasn't my dad that was experiencing that when he experienced it. But in the same way that I learnt from execs when I was a PA, I also learnt from him. And I think that there is a certain stubbornness that you have to be to run your own business. You have to believe in yourself no matter what, even when people don't believe in you. So I just pivoted massively. I mean, the thing that really affected me actually more than anything when, you know, that launch didn't go the way that it did was there was, as I said, a lot of competition in the PA industry. I think you really saw people's true nature come out from a competitor perspective. Yeah. And I describe the industry that I work in as an industry of support, not just to the people that you look after, but also to each other. You know, that's ultimately what your role is to do, to support each other and to be successful. And there was one incident with one other business that wasn't based in London, but a little bit up north, who took me launching a membership very, very, very personally. And we ended up having to get lawyers involved. And that was probably the hardest bit about it. It was dealing with that intense negativity from somebody else who I felt like I could trust. Right. That sort of deterred me or made my focus more on that, really. But I think coming out of that negative part of the membership and thinking that I'd totally failed, I think that I spent about 24 hours like that. Okay. And then I switched into solution mode. Okay. And just thought, I can make this work if I don't focus purely on the negative, and I focus on what else can we do to make this a success. And ultimately we came out of the pandemic as the only PAEA network relatively unscathed, which is a miracle. And so when you needed to lean on someone, you just lent on mum and dad. Yeah. And they just their experiences. Yeah. And they're your parents as well. So when you're lucky and you have a good relationship, yeah, you get both. You're getting the knowledge, but also you're getting the care. Yeah, because we all need to be cared for. Like, it's not a matter of like, oh my God, we're just going to be bulletproof here and just keep banging our heads against the wall and we can run forward. Like, I think everyone needs to have that moment where we can be not cuddled, but you understand what I mean. Be given love and someone that we can let off to. Yeah, absolutely. And that's a good thing when we find that person or persons. So you came out of it, you're like, right, everyone else is kind of falling by the wayside. Yeah. Thanks, COVID, at least you did something decent. Didn't close the doors of the business, even with 400 quid in the bank, thank God. But you went away and you came back. So what made you think, right, I'm going to actually, let's crack on? What gave you, you're walking the dog, like, was there a light bulb or moment or? I think the further I got into that walk, the more and more stubborn I became just to make this work. Determined. Yeah, determined, stubborn, not going to give up. When I was growing up, I had, obviously I said I've got two sisters. One of my sisters has always been very, very, very unwell. She became very unwell when I was about 15 years old. And she ended up having 2 kidney transplants. I was going to give her a kidney at one point. Dad gave her a kidney. Like, there was a lot to do with it. And I think that when you're as a young person, you witness somebody that close to you go through something like that, the whole family dynamic changes as well. So I became very independent very, very young. I feel like I've had to fend for myself pretty much my entire life. Obviously my mum and dad are still there, and they do what they can and always have done, what they can to support me and my younger sister, who's 10 years younger than me. So she doesn't really remember When our middle sister became unwell, it's just like her entire life pretty much. But I think I just took all of those experiences from when I was growing up, seeing how my mum and dad dealt with difficulty in the business, you know, the experiences that I had with looking after myself when Victoria was very unwell, plus all of the experiences that I had working alongside executives, and not just very established execs, I also worked with founders and people who had all of these crazy ideas and only had themselves to rely on to make them happen. I think all of that combined just made me dig my heels in and think, this is not going to be the end. You know, I've worked so hard, I'm not going to let this stop me from going forward, and I just need to think a bit creatively. So I got home, poured myself a quadruple gin and tonic, sat in my favourite spot of the house I lived in at the time, which had a beautiful view onto the river, and just took all of the technology away and just sat down with a notepad and just brainstormed for about 5 hours.
So you went back to basics.
Yeah.
Just thought, right, let's pull this
I just thought I need to strip anything away that is a distraction, anything that's noise, anything that is process or system or structure relating to the product that I've spent so long creating, because right now the product is great, but how I'm, you know, marketing it, it's not that it's not working, it's just that people don't have the money to invest in it at the minute. And we weren't talking a lot of money, like the membership is £24 a month.
Yeah.
You know, but at that point, actually, I think it was 20 quid a month. But it was still £20 a month that people didn't have.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course.
So, yeah.
It was literally, everything was really, really tight.
Yeah, exactly. So it was...
So you came back with your
building.
bit. You got, well, yeah. I think there's that old cliche where what doesn't break you will make you.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there is a lot of truth to that. So you kind of like, I'm going to write this all down. You sat down, and then off you went.
Yep.
And then you didn't really look back. I guess.
No. And now, you know, since then, we've just got stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. We have lots of different corporate partnerships now with big businesses and small businesses who pay for the membership for all of their assistants. That in itself is a huge, huge change in the industry, because a lot of people just don't understand why, you know, PAs and EAs need that level of support. So we're seeing a big change, but it's my mission to start holding companies more accountable for, you know, looking after their PAs and EAs more, because I think they just get left behind. And if you're somebody who leads an organisation, you should care about everybody's development and everybody's well-being, not just, you know, VP, director level. You know, it's everybody.
Yeah.
Because you're all there. You're all there to contribute to the success of the company. But how can you expect anyone to do that if they've got the same job, you know, after 6, 7, 8 years of being there with no change? It's crazy to me.
So if you could hold companies accountable and you could get them to see the way you want your business and their business to merge together, what would that ultimately look like? So what I mean by that is, like, all the companies, like when I look at EAs, I find that they're probably one of the most important people, because they're making sure that whoever they're looking after, that they are being able to do their job to the optimum.
Yeah.
To their optimum. But sometimes what you find is that if they're not being given the love and attention, then they can't ultimately look after the top dog of the business. It doesn't matter who that person is. So in your training programs, is that what you're aiming to do? Is that how you're trying to develop them? Is that how you get the companies to butt heads together and move forward?
I mean, there's lots of things we do in the membership.
Pick one that you think is like, or your top 2 or 3 that you think, like, these are really must-haves that every company should be giving.
Yeah. So firstly, I would say that what we've created is an immediate solution to what most companies just do not have. Most PAs and EAs leave their company or their exec because they feel undervalued, unappreciated, and that they're not growing in their role. And if you have a look at every job description for a PA and EA, 90% of it is exactly the same. But the thing is that as your role as an EA, your job is completely different to everybody else, because you look after somebody who, it's not a cookie cutter role. You know, you're looking after somebody who's got a different set of emotions. You know, let's use us, for example. You react to things differently in the way that I react to. You have different emotional needs that I have, I have. So they have to take this into consideration. It's not the same job. And so therefore every assistant has different needs. So one of the things that we pride ourselves on the most is giving very reactive learning and development opportunities, online and in person. Depending on what that PA or EA is really struggling with, or what the demands that are put on them are from their exec. So, it could be anything from negotiation training to learning how to write a client document or improving their client document skills. It could be their communication. It could be how to identify triggers when it comes to burnout. It could be all sorts of different things, So I think our learning and development is really special.
And burnout must happen is it quite frequent? Because they are under like MD CEOs, they can be quite hard people because they're in a hard industry. Like they're working at the top of their game, or they're supposed to be at the top of their game. And not only that, 9 out of 10 times they've got family to run, they've got other things that are happening that are affecting their ability to give their all into their business. They probably don't have balance, and they probably lean on their assistant a lot harder. So,
yeah, absolutely.
like you're saying, I was working 17 hours a day. Apart from chefs, I don't really know anyone that does work 17 hours a day. Chefs are doing 17, 18 hours a day continuously. So, burnout. What happens when they burn out? Do you get people that come to you say, I'm burning out, I've burnt out, or I can't do this anymore, I'm literally about to have a breakdown?
All the time.
How do you guys deal with that? Because then it's more emotional, isn't it, as well? I mean, it's I can teach you the trade, but ultimately, if I'm being burnt out, I need to get something back that isn't just to do with work.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that every PA needs a therapist.
Yeah, probably. I think everyone needs
a therapist.
We all need therapists. They do us all the world of good.
But no, I have a therapist, and she's done things for us before. There's actually a masterclass that she did for us on how to identify and manage burnout, specifically as an assistant. And I think that that's what we do really well as a community, and what we've always done really well from the beginning. Because I've got that experience as an assistant, I understand how important it is that we have those lessons tailored specifically to this audience.
Yeah.
It's not like LinkedIn Learning where you can, anyone can go on
and
learn the same, the same thing. It's completely different. But I'm a huge believer in, and people who aren't EAs and PAs listening to this probably won't understand what I mean. But for me, burnout hits executive assistants and personal assistants in the same way that it hits executives. The only difference is that an executive's name and their face is tied to the failure of a task.
Yeah.
And also they earn a lot of money. Some execs earn millions and millions and millions of pounds. Whereas if you actually sat down with a PA or an EA to say, what is your part in this project? They would be as involved in the day-to-day and in the weeds and in the detail and sat around the table whilst decisions are made in the same way that their executives. They're
watching the whole process and being part of it.
Yeah. And they are the reason sometimes why things work and why they don't work.
Yeah.
So I look back at my career and I kind of think I was expected to work with the same passion at the same speed, with the same level of energy on some projects as my boss would have, but they were on a salary that was 6 or 7 times higher than me. But I was still expected to work the same hours with the same passion, the same interest as my boss.
So is that what gives you because one of the things I wanted to ask you was what drives you to help people, but I guess that is what drives you to help people.
Yeah.
The fact that you're hold on a minute, I'm working as hard as this person, I'm not earning as much, and I'm getting kicked from pillar to post, and there's no growth or no development for me or anything. So
PAs and EAs are the only group within an organisation who are not allocated a departmental budget because they are swallowed up in their own departments. So, we've got a big event coming up and it's ticketed. It's 160 quid for half a day. It's literally nothing for what they get. The content that we put into that is worth about £2,000 per person. And I had a PA yesterday who works for a really, really big football club, one of the Premier League football clubs. And he said, they haven't got budget for me to do this. But they've just spent something like 500 grand on taking a group of junior finance individuals to Mexico for a 3-week offsite or something like that, you know, and companies just, they need, as I said before, you know, they need to take into consideration, if you're going to care about your staff, you need to care about all of them.
Yeah.
I just have no idea. I'm talking from experience. I just don't know why the person closest to the C-suite would get forgotten about. But unfortunately, it's the C-suite that forgets about them. So it's really hard.
But you'd think that they were the people that notice how much work they put into to you or to the person that's, you know, running their diary, making sure that the other bits and bobs, the small minute details that will fall by the wayside that matter, are being picked up and managed.
The problem is it's not a quantifiable role.
Yeah.
That's the problem. It's the only job in an organisation that's not project-based. You know, so if I worked in marketing, I could say, we did this amazing campaign and we got this many leads and they, you know, they converted into this many customers. Or if I was in finance, I could say I trimmed this much off a budget, or I saved this. Or if I was in procurement, we got a new supplier. It doesn't work like that for PAs and EAs. You know, there's so many moving parts. If you asked anyone who's got a PA, I guarantee you they could probably describe the basics of what they do, but they would have no true understanding of what it takes to make that role a success.
So,
well, I say most people, I would say probably 90% of people.
There must be some that are like,
Yeah.
they really do appreciate what they're doing.
Yeah.
But they are, obviously, like you said, they're in a minority.
Yeah.
So where does Jess see herself? Like, where are you? I mean, you've got your brand, it's
Yeah.
moving along, and you're going to keep growing it, and I can tell you've got the vigor to drive it forward.
Yeah.
But where do you see yourself within how you see yourself being in a number of years' time? Is it like, right, my long-term plan is, do you think that far, or do you just think,
Not
right,
really.
you're just like, this year I'm doing that, next year I'm doing that?
I think that if I was to focus too much on what was going to happen in the future, I'd completely freak out.
Okay.
I just can't do it. I need, for me to be able to continue growing the business, because we are still in a growth stage. I described us the other day as currently being pea-sized, but we need to be rhino-sized, and we can get there really easily. It's just I'm a bit of a control freak and like to do absolutely everything myself still. Well, not absolutely everything myself, but I like to, I find it very difficult to hire, very difficult to hire. I'm one of those people that will either click with you straight away or it just won't ever happen.
So
It's really
how do you then start to think about addressing that, where you can get more people in? I mean, if budget isn't an issue and you're like, right, I've got the budget, it's ready.
Yeah.
Now I actually need to bring some people in to support me and help me grow what we're doing.
I can't describe to you how I would do it, but what I can say is I don't know what I'm looking for, but when I find it, I know it.
Okay.
So I know the areas of the business that I want to grow. Do I know who I need to be in those areas to help grow that company? Probably no at the moment, but it's just a case of networking and just meeting different people. And, you know, with Amy, when I, originally hired her, I said, I don't want to put you in this box of a PA. I want to understand, there's the core of the role that I need help with, but I want to know what your values are. I want to know what your skill set is. I want to know what you genuinely enjoy doing, because that means that our relationship will naturally progress and you'll grow into somebody that, currently you don't know that you're that person.
Yeah, you can become that person.
Yeah, you can become that person. And if she's doing things that she loves and she feels valued, naturally her role is going to grow and she's going to add new things to the company that I never, when I first hired her, I never even realised that were an option really. And I just let her get on with it. And she's great. She's absolutely amazing. So that's the only thing I think for me. I know what kind of people I want to hire, but I don't specifically know who that is at the moment.
Until you see them.
So, yeah.
And do you go through a long process to find them all?
I could interview 100 people and not feel that.
You have to feel a spark.
I, within 10 seconds of interviewing Amy, knew that she would be my PA. I offered her the job within, I think, about 15 minutes.
Okay.
And she actually said, no, we need to slow down. And I introduced her to somebody else at the organisation. And I think I told her what I wanted, but this person told her what I needed. And then we decided that we would go out and we got really drunk at Hawksmoor. and on martinis, and then I made her sign the contract at Portsmouth. So I'm very determined. When I know what it is, you can't really hold me back. But it just takes a while for me to get there.
What would you say is the best part of being like entrepreneurial or being an entrepreneur?
I think it's creating the life that you want. I get this question so many times when people say, I want to start my own company, but I don't know what to do. And this word authenticity, oh, I hate it. I think it's just there's so many things that I think are dressed up that sound so much more complicated than they actually are. You know, so many people say, oh, I don't know what I want to do, this authentic idea. I need to come up with something original, blah, 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 blah. And I say, just stop. All you need to think is, what do you want your life to look like? You know, what's important to you? What are your values? For me at the minute, my biggest value is work. So I put everything into work. But that might change in 6 months' time. You know, I might meet someone, decide I want to have a family. At that point, my values will change. So the business needs to adjust in accordance to that. So I think it's about being in control of your own time. You know, and sometimes that does work against you. Sometimes it works against me. You know, there have been times where I've woken up on a Friday morning and I just thought, you know, screw this. I'm just going to cancel all my meetings. I'm going to have a lay-in for the day. But, you know, and spend time with the dog. But I can't imagine now going back to working on somebody else's schedule. I remember the first 6 months that I'd quit working as a PA, I watched people get on the tube in mass at the same time every single day to get work at 9 o'clock. Yeah. And I remember looking at it thinking, this is madness. Like, this is totally nuts. And obviously that was before COVID. Now we have a lot more flexibility. But I think the ownership that you have over your life versus the ownership that somebody else has over your life when you're not self-employed is one of the biggest benefits. I mean, there's obviously lots of cons to being and doing your own thing, but I think if you have a good support network around you, you can get through what those cons are.
Yeah, I like that. How do you see your life being?
Yeah, well,
what does that look like for you? And if you can see it, then that's what you want to make it.
Yeah,
and control of your life.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, if family is one of your values, then do something that enables you to. And it doesn't matter what it is. You know, get rid of all of this noise, all of these ideas that you have to be a certain way. You know, all of this media intrusion and the opinion of your colleagues and the opinion of your friends and your family. Just do something that makes you happy and enables you to live those values. You might not get it straight away. You probably won't get it straight away. But it happens naturally and grows and changes, and it's fun. After a certain period of time, it's fun.
When it starts to work,
and
you get past the like, oh my god, I'm ripping my hair out, and there is only 400 quid in the bank,
only 400 quid in the bank, and I can only afford to buy a loaf of bread and a box of eggs a week.
Literally. But then once it starts to grow and you have traction and you have growth,
momentum, I really think, and I run on momentum as well. So if I don't have a lot of things going on, I really start to feel my energy fade.
Okay.
But it just takes a little bit of time to get started, and then it takes off before you even know it.
Amazing.
Yeah, I love it. It's exhilarating.
Oh my god! Quick, let's get back to work. Let's go.
Yeah.
I think like just thinking how long have we got? How long have we done? I feel like we've been talking for a bit. Where are we at?
40 minutes.
Perfect. Okay, we've got a good bit. We've got, all right, great. There's some more questions I want to ask.
Am I making sense?
You're making perfect sense.
Good.
I want to quickly. I like that what you said about that though.
About
the fact that see what you want your life to be, like, and then once you can see it, or once you get an idea of what it is, you can then go forward on it.
Yeah, people are desperate to find this unique idea, like desperate to find it. The reality is the assistant room happened by accident. So I didn't spend that time, you know, desperate to find something that I could do that would make me money. Like, that's not the thing. At the end of the day, whatever you do, the money will come eventually.
If you enjoy it and you work hard at it. And I think a lot of that is in life. Like, if you're committed to something and you enjoy what you do, then you'll always sort of like extend, and you'll do better because you enjoy what you do.
Yeah, exactly.
I've been lucky enough for that as well.
Yeah.
Like there's not really much that I can say I don't really like doing, apart from dealing with some people, but that's just generally life.
yeah. I think that sucks whatever you do, isn't it? Dealing with some people.
Yeah. So you've got your big thing you're doing where it's 160 quid a ticket and you're giving all this stuff back.
Yeah.
At what point do you feel, is there a point when you would be like, right, do you know what, this is doing really well, I want to get some big investment in, I want to get some more people involved, and I want to kind of not step back, but I want to let other people start to come through? Is there a point or a trigger when you think that? Because I know I'm not saying as I've got older, I know where that point is.
Yeah.
I can see it, but have you got to that point yet?
It's
in your head where you can think, oh, you know what, in a couple of years' time, I think.
Oh yeah, I've got my exit plan.
You've got your exit
I've
plan.
got my exit plan. I know how much I want to get the business to, valuation wise, and I've got a plan to get to that point. And we're having an incredible year so far financially. But if I look back when I started the assistant room, I was absolutely adamant that I wouldn't monetize it. Adamant. I was like, this is a community platform, everybody needs access to this. But then the further it developed as a product and my confidence developed, I thought, actually, what we're doing and the work that I'm doing, there should be something associated with it, financially. I can't work for free my entire life, and I don't want to go back to being an assistant. However much I loved it and I had brilliant bosses, that part of my life had ended. I wanted to stay in part of the industry, but take a different, approach towards it. So considering I never wanted to monetize it, and we're now very profitable.
And that's probably one of the reasons why it's grown and developed as well, because it's passion.
Oh, so whenever anyone says, how did you, or why did you start the assistant room and not monetize it straight away? I genuinely think that the only reason, as you said, we're as successful as we are now, is because I prioritized reputation over revenue. That's my thing. I always say I prioritize reputation over revenue. It was about building the network, building the relationships, becoming that trusted partner, and then saying, actually, we've got this additional product, you should buy it. And we already had the buy-in from, thousands and thousands and thousands of people around the world. The network now, in terms of the people who regularly engage with us, is close to 50,000. So, and it started from nothing, and it's a very niche industry. So it's actually a huge group of people in the PA/EA industry who now trust us. But because we weren't going in immediately and selling a product, it meant that we were able to build credibility. And because I'd also been a PA before, they all trust me a lot more, which is really nice.
Because you know what's going on.
Yeah, exactly.
You're not selling it from a sheet.
No, exactly. And when it comes to the headhunting side of the business as well, because we do that, I'm trusted a lot more by different clients to get the right people in front of them, because I ask all the right questions, and all the questions that people who don't have experience as an EA just wouldn't ask. So it means that the process is a lot easier, a lot smoother for everybody, which is nice. But if I think back and now how I've changed and how I've grown as a person, and accepted the fact that we did need to monetize and we did need to change and we did need to, go in different directions from what I originally planned. I don't think I would ever take investment, because the narrative would change. And I don't really like the idea of somebody who's not an EA having authority over a very EA-based platform that only really works because I was an EA before, and I have a brilliant group of ambassadors who are all amazing executive assistants who also bring something very unique to the table in terms of what's relevant in the industry, what's not relevant, what are they hearing at events and stuff like that, what can we focus on to really make sure we're still relevant. But I do see myself stepping back.
At some point.
100%. 100%. I say I see myself stepping back, but to think that I struggle to hire, to think of putting somebody in my position scares the hell out of me.
But there will be that person or persons. Like you said, you've got good ambassadors. So you're kind of like, your ethos is, I work with the people that work within the industry.
Yeah.
I'm not looking for people outside the industry to talk to people about the industry that I know nothing about.
No, it's one of the biggest frustrations I had when I was an executive assistant. People teaching you how to be an EA who hadn't been in an EA before.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense really, does it, when you say it like that?
It's just
like someone who's not a designer teaching someone to design. I was like,
yeah,
well, you don't have to turn the computer on.
Yeah, exactly. So it will happen eventually. There's no trigger though. It will. I think I'm on that path already, but I need to be confident that the business is growing in the right way. So I think that where the money will come from for me to step back is the recruitment side of things or the headhunting side.
Okay. And I guess the last thing I really want to touch on is, like, you've come on this journey now. It's been a number of years. Is there anything that you would say to yourself back then, that you'd be like, do you know what? Watch out for this, or be like this, or believe in yourself.
Don't do it.
Don't do it.
No.
Is there anything that you would give yourself,
or
anyone that's starting their own business or that's coming through the ranks? Like, is there anything you'd give them as some advice to say, look, X?
Two things. Going back to the authenticity piece.
Yeah.
Just don't struggle to find an idea. It will naturally come to you, but think about what you want your life to look like and then create something that is the solution to that. And then the other thing that I still have to remind myself of now, and probably the biggest thing that I would say to myself on day one, is that you're going to get more no's than yeses. You're going to have invoices that are unpaid because people just don't want to pay you. Even though you've done the work, you're going to get people who don't appreciate you. You're going to get people who promise you all of these amazing things, and you go through the process of pitching and they're like, yeah, this is amazing. Let's get it signed off. Let's do this. And then it falls through. And I think the thing for me that I've learned is if you focus on those negative things, you miss all of the amazing stuff that's going on around you. All of the amazing things. And when things do go wrong, as long as you take a lesson from it, it's worth it. Like, it's hard. When you face plant, it's hard to pick yourself back up. But if I think about when I lost my first client, and it doesn't happen very often, so it's still difficult for me to talk about this. But when I lost my first client, through no reason other than they just didn't want to, like, we didn't want to continue working with each other. Their motivations had changed. My motivations or their needs had changed. My ability to meet those needs and motivations didn't match what they were looking for anymore. I learned so much from that experience that it meant that I was able to identify when other things similar with that client were happening with other people. So losing one client meant I could keep 5.
Understood.
Yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense.
Just don't focus on the bad stuff, because you miss all of the opportunities around you. I'm not a huge person into manifesting or energy or things like that. I think everybody has their own beliefs, and I think it's just the way that I was brought up in an army household, and kind of like go, get what you want, and if you're going to work hard for something, it will happen. But I do think that focusing your attention in the right place will give you that ability to overcome problems, because you'll be distracted by all of the other amazing things happening around you.
Amazing. I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
And I really love that last piece. I think we've ended it exactly where it needed to end. Have you got that, sweetheart? Yeah. That was amazing.
Was that all right?
I was like, that perfect last bit, yeah, just nailed it.